I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gary. I'd like to introduce Richard Carpenter, who will introduce the dignitaries present today. Richard.
Thank you, everyone, for coming on this special day. I'd like to introduce Dr. Anthony Bridgman, Islip Town Supervisor Angie Carpenter, Captain John Cochran, U.S. Navy, and Colonel James Brennan, U.S. Marine Corps. I'd like to ask Dr. Bridgman to come up.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to West Islip High School. I'd like to welcome our Superintendent of School, Mrs. Bernadette Burns, all our dignitaries here this morning, to our students. Mr. Murphy, we thank you so much for continuing to instill in our students the history of what happened in Vietnam. We're very proud of what the West Islip Chamber of Commerce has done here and is continuing to support the community and to help us to remember everything that has happened. I would like to introduce Mr. Jim Gilmartin, who is our Social Studies Director, to talk a few words about the Vietnam class. Also, let me just introduce and say welcome to our board trustee, Mr. Compatello.
Good morning. I would like to thank everyone for coming out today. And to our students, the reason we bring you out in this warm, sunny day is so that we remember the sacrifices and that we become informed. It's the responsibility of each generation to know the past and to pass on this message. So the purpose of our memorial and the gathering today is so that we can become informed and we can continue to pass on the sacrifices and experiences that we learned from Mr. Murphy's class and from all of your history classes. This is going to be passed on to the next generation. And we use the Vietnam experience in this class as a message to learn lessons from conflict and to honor the people that sacrificed before us. So thank you for coming out today. Mr. Murphy, thank you for your efforts and continuing to make this one of the most popular classes in the school. Thank you to everyone for coming out, and we appreciate the memorial and your works, Mr. Boyd. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Mr. Murphy, Lieutenant Murphy. And you're the platoon. We know who you are.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for participating in this important event. This event is designed to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the ending of the Vietnam War. To commemorate the ending of the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. We at West Islip created this Vietnam experience class now over 25 years ago because it was felt that it offered powerful lessons for young people to learn from our past experiences, and it has only become more relevant in the decades since then. This class is also an opportunity to specifically spotlight the experiences of the American servicemen that were involved in the Vietnam War and promote awareness of the issues they faced when they returned home. The time of the Vietnam War, as we've learned in our class, was a very divisive one for our country. Shrouded in controversy and cast a long shadow over the ensuing decades. The impact of that war can be felt to this day on our government, our society, and of course, most clearly, upon the servicemen that participated in it. And the most tangible and obvious representation of the impact that it had on our community here is right before me. this black stone, this monument that we have displays the names of the 8 West Islip High School graduates that paid the ultimate price for their participation in the Vietnam War. I might add that this monument was donated about 10 years ago by Mr. Charlie Spencer, the man standing over there and the man that spoke originally, he himself a Vietnam veteran. He very graciously donated this stone at the time so that we would have this memorial for us. These students, these names that we see in front of us, attended the school. They sat in the same classrooms you guys do. They walked the same hallways, played on the same teams, and had all kinds of aspirations of what they wanted to do in the future, just as I'm sure you all have as well. But their plans were cut short. They were interrupted when they went home one day and there was a notice in their mailbox from the United States government drafting them into the military, an experience that you don't have to worry about anymore. And they were called upon to serve something bigger than themselves. I often tell my students when I bring them out to the memorial each semester that this memorial is really just the tip of the iceberg if you're trying to assess the impact the Vietnam War had just on our small community here in West Islip. It can be very misleading. 8 names on the surface doesn't seem like a lot, but there is much that you do not see. Because next to each one of those names is a mother and a father that lost a son, brothers and sisters that lost a sibling, teammates on teams, classmates, people you grew up with, neighbors. It's hard to put a number on it, honestly. I don't know what that number would be, but it's probably dozens more for each name that's on there whose lives were negatively impacted because these young men lost their lives in the Vietnam War. And these memorials, just like the one in Washington, D.C., can be misleading in another way. They only acknowledge those that paid the ultimate price by giving their lives. Over 300,000 Americans suffered injuries in the Vietnam War. None of them are represented on the Vietnam Wall, nor are they represented on this monument here in West Islip. There are many others who were exposed to a horrible thing called Agent Orange, which we've learned about, and the over 30 diseases, many of which were fatal, or that they suffered throughout their lives with as a consequence of their service in the Vietnam War. They too are not listed on these memorials. And that says nothing of all the psychological trauma that the unique circumstances they found themselves in the Vietnam War and the memories they had in them traumatized them in some cases for the rest of their lives, some of them going so far as to take their own lives because of it. You can number those in the hundreds of thousands that were psychologically traumatized and in the tens of thousands that ultimately took their life. And again, they're not represented in front of me. They're not represented on the wall in Washington, D.C., but make no mistake about it. Their lives were very much impacted by their tour of duty during that year in Vietnam. So again, this is a good starting place, but it hardly represents the totality of the impact the war had on our community and across this nation. The young men on these memorials are a visible expression of serving something bigger than themselves, a monument that does not physically exist. More, it has to be experienced. The idea of liberty, the idea of freedom. These are just more examples in front of us of citizens that answered a call that has been heard for generations, stretching back over 200 years of our history, to preserve and defend that idea. We have a long and proud history of producing people that cherish it enough that they are willing to sacrifice their lives to ensure that that idea survives. We cannot take it for granted. It barely existed in the world almost 250 years ago when we were an experiment, and it is still under threat from groups and countries in the world today, and we need to look no further than what's going on right now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Freedom, democracy, liberty are precious. So at first glance, these 8 names in front of you, you may not recognize. They might not mean anything to you. They're just names from over half a century ago. But I think you do know them. I think we all know them. If you know freedom, the right to express your views, to disagree, to have choice, to practice your religion, then I think you do know the people that are on this wall. If you believe in the idea of America and our way of life, then you know the names on this wall. And if you contribute to your community even, or your country, whether you be a teacher, a policeman, a fireman, a medical professional, or our military personnel, or you just love and respect the fact that you can call America home and you're proud to live and have the honor of living in the greatest country on earth, then I believe that you do know these names. We are all a part of this monument. We are all a part, in that sense, of the Vietnam Wall. So it's okay to come out here and to be somber when we reflect on the fact that these young men at the prime of their lives had their futures cut short. But at the same time, I would tell the young people in particular here to see this monument as an invitation to explore and to understand and to learn more about the national experience, this national experience and our history in general. Look at it as a beginning and not an end. It is a place, I think, to be inspired, and even in a sense, a place to celebrate. I think it is especially important that young people, as a part of their education, be reminded that freedom isn't free and that we should not take it for granted. We have been using the Vietnam class as a vehicle to convey this message and hope that ultimately students come away with a sense of pride in our country and gratitude to the men that serve there and to all of our service people that continue to serve our country to this day. Thank you again for coming out and participating in this important ceremony.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Angie Carpenter, the Supervisor of the Town of Islip.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Mr. Murphy, that was absolutely compelling, inspiring, and how lucky these students are to be a part of someone who has that kind of passion and dedication. We are really blessed in this community of West Islip, in this town of Islip, in this wonderful country that we call home. I am so very, very proud of all of you, particularly the Chamber, for doing these kinds of things. Charlie, for your generous donation 10 years ago in having this monument erected, and for keeping the memories alive, keeping the lessons alive that we need to hold near and dear to our hearts as we go forward each and every day. You students are so blessed. You really, really are. And I don't know if you appreciate it today, but there is a day that you will come to realize how truly blessed you are to have had the education you have, to be able to sit in a classroom and listen to someone like Mr. Murphy, who speaks from his heart, who really inspires you to be better citizens. Again, to the Chamber for pulling this together, this and the monument that we have at 9/11, everything that you do to remind us how blessed we are to be part of this incredible community. At the town, we have the Veterans Advisory Board, and we're very fortunate to have Captain John Cochran, Councilman Cochran, chair that effort for us in the town, because it is so important that each and every day we cherish the memory of those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, that we bless with a tremendous heart full of gratitude those who served our country and continue to serve. Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to introduce Town Councilman John Cochran, U.S. Navy retired captain.
Morning, everyone. Some time ago, I was your age. I was in high school, and my cousin went to West Islip, and one day I said, you know what, I'm going to join the military. And Bobby and I used to surf over Democrat Point, and my cousin, who was a year younger than me, goes, John, you're crazy. It's right after Vietnam. Well, you imagine you guys sitting in a classroom or your homeroom, and the guys are coming in your age going, I got my notice. They were your age, and they're going to get the lottery. So these guys in the green jackets, some of them didn't have a choice like I had to enlist. I was the first generation of the volunteer military. So I enlisted in '77. When I went to boot camp, I had nice long blonde hair. I cried the first day when they shaved it all off. But all my instructors were Vietnam Marines. And we chanted the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that's where we worked out. We had cadence all about Vietnam. And for the next 10 years, until the Desert Storm, is when America kind of started respecting the military again. So during the 80s, we didn't have the stuff. These guys came home to nothing. 80s, we had terrorism work, and all of a sudden, Desert Storm happened, and we started seeing yellow ribbons. It took a nation that long, from 1975 to 1991, to start recognizing us who served the military. And it's not that we wanted a big hug. We made the commitment. We're going to serve this nation. And we did it voluntarily. So the first volunteer force that was not drafted. So I'm proud to be part of that. In that course that time, we saw women join the military, become pilots, command ships. When I first was in the early 80s, there were no women on the ships. There were no pilots. It was strictly an all-male force. So what I could get out of this, and to thank the Chamber to doing it, anytime we do a memorial to recognize the men and women who served this country, it's great for the community, it's great for the nation, it's great for you to know history, because we don't want history to repeat itself. I know you have the selective service you guys are going to have to sign up for, all of you, when you're 18, but that is not the automatic draft. Not what these guys had to deal with, where you got the notification and you talked about what number you got. So I'm blessed to have served this nation, and I'll give you a fact that's your generation now. So if you're going to enlist in the military or join between the ages of 18 and 27, out of the 100% of the men and women who could join, 70% of your generation cannot join the military because of drugs, overweight, workout, criminal records. 70% of that age group. Out of the 30%, only 5% can handle the technology that the military has now on our submarines, our jets, our ships, weapon systems. And I'm not talking about the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has the same kind of technological. So the generational shift of just carrying a gun is no longer what a Marine, a sailor, soldier, airman, merchant marine. You have to know technology, and you have to be prepared to serve. So I want to thank you for learning about what happened in Vietnam. It's very much to keep the history in there. And thank you for the Chamber for doing this, and our Vietnam vets, because they're the ones that need a big hug. It's long overdue. Thank you. God bless America.
Hey, John, do cell phones count on technology? So I got 100% here. All right, thank you very much. At this time, it's my pleasure to present Deputy Commissioner of Planning, Town of Islip, a 33-year veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, Colonel James C. Brennan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Supervisor Carpenter, Charlie, thank you very much. Much like Captain Cochran, my experience is right after the end of the draft era and the start of the all-volunteer force. All of my instructors were Vietnam veterans. They shaped what the military is today. The Vietnam era was very difficult from one particular standpoint that I want to highlight: the civil-military divide. Our civilian leaders tell us what to do. Our soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen, they do what's asked of them. During the Vietnam War, the American public had a really hard time separating those two facts apart. The valor that our veterans showed in the Ashaw Valley during the Tet Offensive in Hue City, the Chu Lai, Con Tien, Da Nang, didn't matter here at home. America grew up following the Gulf War. We matured. We were able to separate the policy from the person, from the soldier. Today, we can celebrate the Vietnam veterans for their accomplishments and what they did. They did not receive the same welcome home that I received when I came back from Afghanistan or Iraq. Today, we have the opportunity to say thank you to them and pay honor to those that gave their lives. So from the bottom of my heart to all the Vietnam veterans, I want to say thank you and welcome home. God bless America, God bless our servicemen, and God bless these souls that gave their lives for our country so that we can speak our mind and do what we want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Brennan. Colonel Brennan plays another role in my life. He's my son-in-law. Right now, I'd like to invite up Brad Wilson. He's the Executive Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce of West Islip, and he is going to read the names of the 7 men on the wall here from West Islip. And I'd ask the Vietnam vets here today to come up. We're going to place a rose on the monument in front of it for each member. Brad?
David Frederick Bukowski, Vaughn David Connell, James Ralph Cooper, William Brian Monahan, Daniel Russell Nids, Thomas Frank Post, and Leonard Selenikio.
At this time, we're going to lay the wreath, and I'd ask the Vietnam vets to help lay the wreath. And I'd ask Mr. Murphy to assist. And at this time, I'd ask Colonel Louis DeLeo of the 11th Regiment U.S. Volunteers to perform taps. Thank you. I'd ask the school superintendent to step forward if she would. I know you've been the driving force between everything that happens in the schools, and I'd just like to thank you for all you do over the years. And I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two before we close.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm so grateful to have you all here today. Mr. Murphy, your words were inspiring, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I can't imagine walking away from this experience this morning being somewhat changed, because I know I am. Thank you to the Chamber. You've always been incredibly supportive of our schools, and thank you so much for our actively enlisted and our retired veterans. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all you have done to ensure our civil liberties and democracy here in America. God bless America.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Murphy, if you'd step forward, please. Take that out of the, I want to present this book to you. This is a book from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, published by the Veterans Administration. It's a directory of names from the Vietnam War. There's very few of these around. It's a little worn because we used it every time we had the Vietnam Wall displayed on Long Island, but I know it'll be meaningful to you and to your platoon.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And also, Rich, we also, Mr. Murphy, would you want to do?
Brad, come on.
And Brad?
Just like to say thank you, and we're lucky to have you on our community.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
So just in closing, I want to say you guys and gals are very lucky to have somebody like Mr. Murphy. And I think you know it. And we're gathered here today because we're depending on you to pass the word on about Vietnam to generations going forward. Because not everybody speaks about it, but Mr. Murphy has been the man who has given you the word, and it's up to you to carry it forward. So thank you. And just a little tidbit about this monument here. It's just a piece of stone, but it's very meaningful. And the stone came from India. And so did the monument down in Washington, D.C., the wall. That stone came from the quarry in India where this stone came from. And Gary Miller, my partner here, and I designed that stone, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of paper figuring out what to put, and I hope we did these fellows justice. And I thank you for standing out here in the cold. I hope you don't get sick. And thank you again, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Gilmartin, for the social studies classes that you have here at the high school, and Supervisor Carpenter for all you do for the town and for the youth of our community. John Cochran, the councilman, and for all the planning you do there, Colonel Jim. And for to our Vietnam vets, and by the way, I'm a Vietnam vet, era vet, which means I didn't serve in Vietnam, but I was in the service during the Vietnam era. Thank you. Dr. Bridgman, thank you for all your support over the years. When we had the Vietnam Wall here, he was instrumental in getting everything going. He never says no, and that's what I like about Dr. Bridgman. And he's the best-dressed principal I've ever seen. Thank you. So thanks very much, everybody.